for having this meeting this morning. I also wanted to inform you that we are on live feed on both the local television and just giving the cue that even on Facebook Live. So it's good. It's a good information to share with the general public. I think you know most of the members of the Senate. Senator Caro and Senator Edith Leon Guerrero, and to my left is Senator Francisco Q. Cruz. I do want to extend apologies for the other members that are not able to join us this morning, as I do know that they are also pretty much value the efforts of this organization that we're about to receive your report. And also wanted to welcome the staff, AOB staff. Thank you for joining us, both from the Senate and the House, and everybody else that are here physically in person, and for the ones that are joining us on live feed. Buenos dias. At this time, I want to turn the mic over to Mr. Chairman, and just to kind of formally do your introduction.
Hafiday, Tiro, good morning. Senate President, thank you for this opportunity for sharing and presenting our 2021 annual report. Thank you, Senator De Leon Guerrero, Senator Neighbor, and Senator Cruz. I know you guys are all very busy, so thank you for taking your time to be here this morning. And I also want to apologize that I have to leave a little bit early. As you know, I may or may not know, I'm also the president of the Sports Association, and we are hosting the mini games, Pacific mini games, and the CEO and the president, two gentlemen from Fiji and Australia, came in. One came in yesterday morning, one came in this morning. So there's a game organizing committee at 10 o'clock that I must attend. So I will leave here around 9:40. Yeah, so I want to apologize. Just cannot, there's no way to change their schedule. And so anyway, we're very happy to be here this morning to share, just like last year. And the difference is last year we only had a little over 6 months of work when we talk about 2020. But this report and the presentation this morning covers the entire 12 months of 2021. And as you can imagine, we're already end of April. So beyond the first quarter of 2022. So we share what we were able to get done last year and talk a little bit about the first 4 months and outlook for 2022 as well. And we have two videos. We provide a booklet in front of you. So take your time to read at your convenience time. We do have a 9-minute video that we prepared to kind of summarize the report. So that will be the first video. And then the second video is an initiative that we are very happy and very proud, because that's actually what we call the community effort, called public-private partnership. And the video would share with you, actually, all credit goes to the community members that you will see on the other video, or that will be the second video. And that program continues. Just when we thought we were pretty busy last year, the first 4 months tell us that we're actually gaining even more momentum as new partners sign up during 2022. So we're excited about the PPP project and a couple other initiatives. So without further ado, maybe we can first show the first of the two videos.
Hafiday and Tirawami. 2021 wrapped up the first full year of the Governor's Council of Economic Advisors. I am so proud of the work that the Council continues to achieve in our community, one of which was the creation of an ever-growing public-private partnership focused on improving the quality of life for all who calls the Marianas home. We value our partners in Rhoda, Tinian, and Saipan, who have been instrumental in the enhancements of 82 community sites, public facilities, basketball courts, and street medians this past year. The Council's work continues in 2022 to further advance its recommendations, ideas, and proposals to build an economy that is inclusive and beneficial to all. I extend my gratitude to GSEA Co-Chairman Jerry Tan and the entire Council for their commitment and expertise. As we look ahead to rebuild our economy, we are preparing to embark on more transforming projects to improve the Marianas, our home, a sustainable multi-island destination, a place for future investments. We invite you on this journey with us because together we can.
The Governor's Council of Economic Advisors is pleased to provide its 2021 end-of-year report covering its first full year of operation. In a year when the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands economy continued to adjust to the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, our mission was even more vital: to improve the quality of life for residents of the Marianas. With support from its community stakeholders and government leaders, the GCEA was able to make notable strides that aided in the recovery and further development of commercial activity. In 2021, the Council saw tangible action in the recommendations provided in 2020. Some of the top accomplishments in 2021 include the creation of the Commonwealth Economic Development Authority. As the first public law of the 22nd CNMI legislature, CEDA was established to ensure that future economic development in the Marianas would be driven by the needs and desires of the community. Economic development became a proactive responsibility and priority of the government. Expansion of public-private partnerships. The Council proudly welcomed more partners from community organizations, businesses, schools, and government agencies to its PPP program. 77 partners committed to adopting 82 sites across Rota, Tinian, and Saipan. PPP partners worked diligently to upgrade and maintain public and village facilities, basketball courts, beach parks, medians, sports facilities, and tourist sites for the enjoyment of residents and visitors. Universal garbage collection. The Council's recommendation for the establishment of a universal garbage collection system for the Commonwealth resulted in an executive order that established the Universal Garbage Collection Task Force. The task force submitted its report to Governor Torres in December 2021, outlining the methods in which the government can make UGC a reality for residents. Tourism Resumption Blueprint. In March 2021, Governor Torres created the Tourism Resumption Task Force to create a tourism resumption plan. The Tourism Resumption Investment Program was established, and the Marianas became the first destination in the region to successfully negotiate a tourism bubble with South Korea. Legislative proposals. The Council is grateful for the support of the CNMI legislature. 4 bills were introduced in 2021 as a result of the Council's recommendations that focused on the advancement of economic development and private sector growth in the Commonwealth. In 2021, the Council produced and provided to Governor Torres 5 key recommendations in accordance with Executive Order 2020-11. The standout of 2021 was the Marianas Village Pride campaign that aimed to improve the quality of life at the village level and support the long-term vision of the Marianas as a world-class destination. Incredible beautification and cleanup efforts resulted. Under MVP's Adopt a Median program, schools, groups, businesses, and families quickly signed on to transform medians, sidewalks, and crosswalks in their villages. The result: cleaner and safer roadways for pedestrians and motorists. Tourism is the lifeblood of the economy and the primary source of private sector jobs. The Tourism Resumption Investment Program, TRIP, aims to safely revive critical economic activity in the Marianas and support the thousands of jobs that have been impacted by tourism's closure. Other key Council recommendations in 2021 included encouraging the development of more inter-island transportation options for residents and visitors, and greater support for the CNMI's commercial fishing industry. Since its creation, GCEA's long-standing objective is to aid the CNMI government in its efforts to mobilize and best use federal assistance to develop public and tourism infrastructures that directly support the economy. The Council has taken significant strides in drafting proposals for transformation projects in Rota, Tinian, and Saipan. These plans include The transformation of tourist sites, village facilities, beaches and parks, sidewalks, bike lanes and medians, nature trails, and other new projects. $5.5 million in ARPA funding has been prioritized for projects that are ready for implementation. With the partial resumption of arrivals through the Korea travel bubble and the continuation of federal support, 2021 was poised for a modest increase in economic and commercial activity. GCEA sees tremendous opportunity in sparking recovery by mobilizing federal resources for construction and infrastructure developments. There are also opportunities to improve the business licensing and permitting processes that can help streamline the return of critical commercial sectors. The CNMI continues to face challenges. To recover from the pandemic, the CNMI must find a way to utilize existing resources to support jobs and acquire the necessary foreign labor to support U.S. workers. Also needed urgently is the full resumption of the tourism industry across all sectors. The viability of the present structure of the economy hinges on several factors. As a result, the Council has identified opportunities in 2022 to further support economic recovery. Domestic policy that supports business investment, development, growth, and retention, as well as vocational training and continued advocacy for improvements and changes to the immigration transition period. Tourism resumption and infrastructure. Substantial recovery of the tourism industry. The urgent need for diversification in the sources of economic activity throughout the Marianas. Increase of the gross domestic product, expand on the Marianas Village Pride campaign with emphasis on Marianas School Pride and Business Pride activities, and the completion of GCEA's 10-year plan. The Council invites you to read in more detail about its work and vision for the Marianas by downloading the 2021 GCEA Annual Report at cnmieconomy.com/reports.
2021 was an amazing year. It is because of the partnership that we built with key stakeholders and the community. We intend to bring the momentum into 2022. Work on the projects that are transformational to improve quality of life across 3 islands, Rhoda, Tinian, and Saipan. We look forward to creating our 10-year plan, 2020 to 2030, as the blueprint for the future. We welcome new partners and we thank you for your partnership. Si Jules, Maase, Gilisal, together we can. So, so these are the two. Thank you. Video that hopefully give you some good idea about some of the work that the Economic Council is doing, and everything that you saw is was done in 2021. Um, I want to really thank our 82 or 77 partner. I get mixed up. 77 partners in signing up, and it's safe to say that we have over 1,000 volunteers. All the work that you see on the video are really done by our volunteers, our community members. Started with NGO, different service organization, ethnic group. So we see different ethnic group adopt different site, and then I'm always mentioning that I'm very happy with the latest development with the schools, the student. So you saw some student are working on their respective school, campus and parking lot and the curbs. So tomorrow, actually, interesting enough, is tomorrow at 3:30 at Sugar King, we're doing the award presentation to the Marianas Village Pride, which we started sometime fourth quarter last year, including some Christmas decoration on across all three islands. But one of the very exciting project is the student actually were involved in designing the village flag. At the council, we talk about what can we do, more for the village, for the residents, and unlike Guam, we don't have a village mayor for each, every village, right? We have one village for the entire island of Saipan and Rhoda and Tinian. So it's amazing. Edna told me just Marianas High School alone submitted over 800 entries for that design, and so we will be awarding actually winners tomorrow afternoon. If all of you have time, you please welcome to stop by, and really happy to really thank the effort and also their participation, and congratulate, of course, the winners. That's one of the project that we did that you saw earlier, and to us it's a little bit like a pilot last year that we want to expand to do more this year as well. So there are community member like Chalam Pia, I would share with you. There are 4 family that step up and say, we want to adopt the median. We want to, and if you see the village signage are coming up, that's through the grant management. So we work closely with them. So we are also putting the village sign along the main road. And the first one that came up was Chalam Pia. There were 3 signs in their village. And so we're very excited about the resident taking interest to really work with us and see what we can do even more. We need to study what else we can do on the village level as well. So we're engaging the resident from village, we're engaging the student, from the schools. So we work closely with PSS. Also, they're one of our key partner. So as far as 2022 is concerned, there are different things that we're working on. A lot of them are continuation from 2020 and 2021. And because we talk about wanting to become a world-class destination in order to have a strong economy and a strong tourism industry. So we are developing the 10 years plan that you saw on the video. That's one of the key projects that we're working on. We divided the council into different committee. We already have one presentation, and the first draft will be coming out May 31st, end of May, on the 10 years plan. And then it will go from there. And that's going to be like our Bible. We identify, actually, we take what we call milestone approach. We take a look at what we accomplished, for example, in 2021, and identify them as milestone. But we also want to make sure that we accomplish 2022 milestones. But we also want to identify what are the milestones in the next 8 years, because some will take months, some will take years. And until you actually get those milestones accomplished, you won't get to the end goal. And so if we're able to clearly identify and, of course, update and adjust the plan as we go along, then I think we have a good chance of getting to the finishing line in terms of becoming a world-class destination. And that's important because we want to make sure that we have a strong economy, provide good paying job to our resident. And then we also examine about our limited resources and come up with the right approach and right plan for developing our industry. Because we know we're a small community, we're small islands. We don't have, unlimited resources, whether it's capital, whether it's workforce, whether it's our nature that we want to protect. Those are all very, very important that we need to come together. So we work very closely with MVA. We're not MVA, but we work closely with MVA in terms of tourism side is concerned. And another area that we also talk about is the Japan market. We've been working hard also together with MVA to, as you know, before pandemic, we had Skymark just for 2 months, 3 months. Then, unfortunately, bad timing. And it was very, very difficult to bring back Japanese tourists. We have tried it for several years after we lost Delta Airline. And Korea, we have already the travel bubble. Currently, there are 5 airlines already flying here. And China, the border still closed. We don't know when they're going to reopen the border. So Japan market become that much more important because we enjoy Japanese tourists over 40 years. And compared to Japan and Korea, compared to Korea and China, Tokyo actually is the closest to the Northern Marianas. Only 3 hours flight, and they have over 40 years history with us. In order for us to really have a strong tourism industry, we need to have Japan market back and come back strong. So this is another priority that we also pushing along, working closely with MVA as part of our work in 2022 as well. And we do a lot of cleanup. Senator Derogori, you mentioned about certain park. This group out there that actually adopt most of the park and most of the beach park and site. But at the same time, in order for us to go to the next level, we need to do more than just clean up. We need to, for example, do all the big repair and improve the whole site and what we call transformational. So this year, our approach is all transformation, not just continuing cleanup. I think we have done that. We'll continue to do that. Our partner will continue to do that. But our partner are not necessarily in the position to do transformation. So that's an area that we are going to continue to support and work closely with the government agency as another goal and something different from what we were doing the last 18 months, for example. So the 10 years plan, the Japan market and destination transformation. Today is Wednesday. So on Monday morning, we actually organized a bus tour. We invited the council member, the MVA, and the government agency, including Parks and Recreation. We spent 2 hours up in Mapi because we're pushing the tourists to come back, maybe hopefully starting this summer. We'll see how the recovery goes. But there are necessary immediate repair work that needs to be done today, not 6 months later. And we don't want the tourists to come in and visit the island, visit the site, and take picture and video and send it back home and see everything is not in good shape. So we're pushing along that one as well. So we actually organized that 2 hours bus tour and brought a lot of government officials with us and take a look at Mapi because and we only have 2 hours, so we can only cover a couple stops in Mapi. So it's very exciting. I'm actually very thankful to all our council member. Your Senate President actually is one of our council member, and the other thing is that we make sure is all the work covers Rhoda, Tinian, and Saipan. That's very, very important. even wearing my hat of the Sports Association or the mini games, the very first organizing committee meeting, I said we need to find opportunity to hold some of the games in Rhoda and Tinian. So right now, the triathlon will be held 5 days in a row in Rhoda. This is within the mini games, June 17 to 25, and the beach volleyball will be in Tinian. So we want to bring the game to all the islands, not just one island. And this is Northern Marianas mini games. So that's this. Thank you. That's the same approach that we're taking at the Economic Council as well. We also talk about inter-island travel, and we all know without that, it's hard for them to rebuild a strong economy and hard for our resident to go back for work, to visit family more often, more affordable, and also for the tourist. And one opportunity is post-COVID. People tend to travel less because of the COVID situation, but when they travel, they stay longer. So we are multi-island destination, just like Hawaii. So we want them to come, and now they're prepared to stay longer than the usual three days. So they would have chance to also visit, not only stay in Saipan longer, but also take their time to visit the two neighboring island, Rhoda and Tinian, and that's part of our strategy as well. That we work closely with MVA. So that's the other area that I just want to highlight. Rhoda Tinian is always part of our planning, and we're sticking to it. So at this time, in case if you have any comment, I would be happy to answer. Before I turn over, we have 3 committee chair within the council, just like last year. I think I shared with all of you. We have Matt, we have Alex, and we have Mike Sablan. And Mike is not here with us this morning. So a lot of the work actually is done by the committee through their effort and leadership. So I would actually turn it over to them since I have to leave the meeting earlier, and they will be able to continue the discussion. But in case you guys have any question right now, I'll be happy because I'll still be here for a few minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a great presentation, and I'll yield to the members if any of they want to pose a question to the chair. Senator. Okay, all right. Okay, Senator Cruz.
Thank you, and thank you, Chairman, and Alex and Matt for a great presentation. I really appreciate all the commitment and devotion with all the partners and volunteers that are involved to make our island a beautiful island for the tourists to attract tourists coming over to our 3 islands. And I just want to ask in regards to the last meeting that I participated in Rhoda in regards to the economists out of Hong Kong regarding the viability of tourists coming to the island of Tinian. And I am very happy that the Department of Defense has reduced the proposed training to have in the island of Tinian, including airspace restriction. So that changes would that possible would that changes the experts' opinion on bringing tourists to the island of Tinian? Because I remember it was stated that it will be probably tourists will be coming to the island of Tinian on a signature event rather than on a daily or weekly basis. So I hope that changes that the last opinion that economists have shared with us.
Senator Cruz, thank you for that. I think definitely the conversations from the very beginning with the military, even when they were scoping into the Commonwealth early on, five years before we even talked about the plan for the CNMI, the one thing we continually told them was you cannot think that we could put something like they recommended in a tourism corridor in the Commonwealth, specifically Tinian Saipan's tourism corridor. And I'm glad that they did. To your point, I'm glad they did recognize that the idea of having high caliber weapons and strafe bombing and amphibious assault training, especially on the island of Tinian, was, in, for lack of a better term, kind of ridiculous because of the tourism aspect. To your point, though, made, one thing that are continually asking is the joint use of assets on the ground. The one thing that is needed in Tinian will be, and Rhoda, is tankage, the ability to refuel, rebunker larger planes for direct service. We've looked at, our organization has looked with Century Travel at the idea of direct service from China into Tinian, into Rhoda. But the continual issue is the ability to top off. And so, yeah, to answer your question, our continued question and argument and request of the military is the idea of joint use of those assets on the ground for private use when we do encourage charters and direct service. I think it's viable. I think it's there. I think we just need to keep the pressure on, the full court press on them in that effort. And, mind you, as Jerry mentioned during his presentation, the one thing that we did pursue with MVA when we were looking at providing these travel cards, the $500, was that we had to ensure that we were cutting that between all three islands. And interestingly enough, not interesting enough, but the fact is that a lot of the tourists that came in from Korea were using that card and going into Tinian, whether it be for day or overnight. But we did track it, and there was considerable use of that card for day trips into Tinian. So I think it's always been viable. We were doing hundreds a day, in fact, back pre-COVID into Tinian. And so I think it's continually an opportunity for both islands.
Yeah, and if I could, Senator Cruz, President, I think
okay.
there's a lot of areas to commend the leadership in Tinian in engaging in these conversations, not just with CJMT, but with Divert. One of the aspects that is a bottleneck with any tourism development is room stock and housing and accommodations. And because of, as you know, the construction labor and the requirements of existing ongoing DoD activities, that is sort of spurring significant investment in Tinian that hasn't really been seen in a long while. And so as these investments continue, coupled with a lot of the ongoing efforts that we're supporting, that we're excited about with MVA, to do the multi-island destination, it all seems to be in the right direction towards building the right level of accommodations to have the investment that is existing to supplement and to reinforce and grow with additional tourists.
Thank you. I raised this question and concern because when I first heard about the presentation of that expert, I'm very concerned about the economic growth on Tinian because there's some potential investors that are interested in some structures already up and running, and I'm very concerned about tourism because if we have that infrastructures up and ready to to operate, we don't have the support of the tourists to come down and for that business to continue to operate or to be successful. And the most important part there is the job opportunity for the island of Tinian. So I appreciate if this council will make it known and expose that it's viable and it's no longer a high risk for the tourists to come to Tinian because of the changes of the military training that will happen on the island of Tinian. Thank you again.
Yeah, one last point, Senator Cruz, members, is one of the big things I think that's been a discussion going back and forth between DC and thanks to Kim Hines, who's really taken a leadership role in this effort, is looking at that one facility, the hotel that's there, and the potential fine or non-fine. Nobody seems to really understand, why that's lingering. But if we could get that taken off the table, I think that would open up the extreme opportunity for investors to take a look at that facility. And to Matt's point, that's why I'm bringing this up, is he brings up the stock re- availability within Tinian. Room stock is going to be the key to Tinian's ability to have overnight stay and direct service. And again, we're hopeful that by virtue of that coming off and a potential investor coming in, we've looked at it, but as long as that number hangs over the head of that facility, we're it's going to be difficult. And so we're hopeful that Kim or somebody down the line in the future is very successful in relinquishing that Sinfan fine, and we have the ability to move on with that facility. But that's the most viable opportunity at this stage for Tinian's focus. And within the report, we focus in on government land availability within the islands and the strategic importance, we think, of focusing the leases for these particular sites towards branding. The one thing that we have seen throughout regions is when you brand hotels, when you require the branding of hotels, especially for the limited public lands that we have along the shoreline, whether it be Saipan, Tinian, or Rota, that the focal point would be to have DPL, and we have had these conversations with them, and they have been very attuned to the idea that we focus branding towards all the facilities, and even on Tinian for the military opportunity. If you look at the kids and the young adults that come in the military, their focal point has been Hyatt Regency as an opportunity to stay, because of the point system that they get when they do stay. So they get a stipend, they use that money, and then they're trying to collect the points for the particular hotel stay. It's as simple as that, really, from a perspective of somebody coming on from outside and looking in towards staying in a particular location. I'll put this on notation that Fiesta Resort at the time, in our viewpoint, was a much better facility, recently upgraded in the course of the last few years. And as we all know, because Hyatt's lease was lingering, they were not putting money back in, but yet they were fetching a larger percentage for room night than the Fiesta, because they were a brand, because they were who they were. And not for the actual facility itself, which in our viewpoint was very beleaguered, I think, as we all realize. So I just wanted to make that point that, whether it be short stay Holiday Inn, Holiday Plus, some form or fashion of branding in Tinian, Rota, Saipan, that we look at that level of 3, 4, 5-star towards the effort of focusing public lands towards these opportunities. Thanks.
And just additional point on the multi-island thing. We all know that if you don't have a road to your business, no one's going to go. And then once you do have a road, it's the quality of that road kind of determines how many people are able to come to your business. And this is why the inter-island transport is so critical, with not just the Saipan economy, but the Sinamai economy overall. We know this from TRIP and from the resumption program, was that all we needed was to ensure that we had air service. Once we get air service, then all of the cards start rolling down. We're able to fill the seats. We're able to have a chart path forward. But if we don't have air service, we don't have transportation routes, it's not a conversation. And so within the report, we did offer recommendations on some concepts on air service inter-island. At the time, we were talking about the highway, marine highway designation, but simultaneously to us talking about it, Kim Hines out of CPA and CPA's team was already hard at work at it, and they were able to accomplish it. And we think that's huge, a huge opportunity for inter-island transport of freight and passengers overseas. And that it's something that we need to keep our focus on and keep building on, because it is a tremendous leap forward in our ability to connect. In addition to air service, which is there's a lot of options on the table, and it's something that I think in the future, in this year and in the coming years, that we can find some pavement to put on that road to make it more seamless in transferring and making sure that people are able to enjoy all the other islands of the Sinamai.
Thank you, Matt. Senator Dilongoro, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a couple things going through my mind right now because I've been doing a lot of inquiries. Let's talk about the valuation of the CNMI market. I did send an email a while back to the Secretary of Finance regarding the valuation study of the Commonwealth market. And the response I got was that there was a bid out there for, for any firm, I guess, to do the study. So I'm not sure where that study is at right now. The reason why I asked that question is because we just recently, our CETA recently hired David Guerrero from First Hawaiian Bank. And I guess one of his biggest responsibility is to attract new money, new investors, new industries for the market. And that's the reason why I asked the question of the market valuation. And you guys understand this, that when an investor is looking from the outside in, it is important to know what is the value of that particular market. Is it worthy of their investment dollars? And this is why I want to pose the question to you. If there's any most recent information regarding that valuation study of the CNMI market, we talk about public lands and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really important study to have. But I think valuation can be measured in two fronts. The valuation study that was required under the Constitution for public debt and the limitation of public debt really comes down to the real property value and the assessed real property value. So not just what the value is on the fair market, but what is the assessment on that value from the government standpoint. And that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is through output. And so the common measurement of economic output and value of an economy is the gross domestic product, which in 2020 was 1.1 billion within nominal value. So that's available from you. They're always, I mean, they're delayed in publication. So the most recent one we have is 2020, but we have a little bit of a discussion about our viewpoint coming forward that 2020 is a significant reduction in GDP from the prior years. But in looking at what are the resources and the structural changes to the economy that have existed during this no tourism era, where export of services, which is the value of tourism, declined obviously significantly during the COVID timeframe. But what did rise and what did bolster the total value of the CNMI was consumption expenditures and government expenditures. And so these were, people coming back to work from government austerity. These were stimulus payments. These were government funds being pumped in from the federal government and from the other sources. And so going forward, we see the number of stimulus activities that happened in 2021, the continuation of government expenditures for ARPA and the CARES Act. And so we feel that 2020 will be the low point, the TRO, and the 2021, 2022 will see some continual minimal increases in gross domestic product and the total value.
If I could add on to Matt's point, and that's a great macro aspect of it. For lack of a term, the micro aspect of this would be the report that we did within the branding study. I think we should get you that report. It's pretty exhaustive. We hired a consultant. We worked with her on this with relation to what we believe would be the opportunity of branding were instituted within the industry. Tourism, obviously, being our number one. And as I mentioned earlier, as my example of Hyatt Regency, even though it was a beleaguered, weathered facility, they were still fetching top dollar in the Commonwealth by virtue of just because they were the brand and because they had other aspects like the point system and things, other aspects of their facility. And that's sort of the point I kind of want to make, is that we think that by virtue of developing branding, whether it be the Crown Plaza that we're putting in, a future 5-star boutique that we're looking at putting in the Kanoa Resort facility downline, and then other facilities that are coming to bear with their lease agreements downline. I don't want to talk out of turn for other organizations, but we hear that branding is a focal point for them. So to your point, Senator, if somebody is looking in, they're looking at the ability of, what is going to be the overall opportunity to garner the best rate structure if I put in a brand, because brands are costly, not only from the percentage that you have to pay to operate the brand, but then the FF&E, annual FF&E for a particular facility As an example, Crown Plaza has required $3.5 million a year of continual reinvestment into the facility. That's a brand requirement. The Hyatt Regency's almost got a comparable requirement. So it's not willy-nilly. And the one thing that brands do, in large part for the consideration, I think Jerry mentioned in previous meetings, is they vet a particular organization to the legitimacy, the ability for them to actually complete a project when they do break ground. As you have seen throughout the Commonwealth, what we have seen is, organizations that have come in don't necessarily provide full due diligence and then build and then leave white elephants to bear. And that's blanketing our Commonwealth landscape to prime real estate that, is in full purview of all of our visitors that are coming into the Commonwealth. And I don't think that's a legacy we want to continue to bear on our people, on our islands, but most especially on our economy. And so looking in and seeing what the opportunity is of a portfolio that could generate $100 million, as an example, to your point, we're hopeful that that's what's going to translate when we do focus DPL to look at branding as a maybe not the number one priority, but a priority when you are scaling an investor to come in, and hopefully they put it in there as a mandate or requirement. I think it's even that important that we focus DPL on that effort. But I don't want to talk it to death, but I think at least in the tourism aspect, we want to think about what the opportunity is of an investor to come in and look at a brand versus just their own name, if you will. And I'm not trying to diminish anybody that's here currently. There are viable operations that we have in tourism and within hotel operators, but the brands do fetch the dollars, and they do legitimize a destination. So.
And if I could, just on the quality investor thing, that was something that was contained, was sort of recommended. I should say I think we're super thankful for the effort of the legislature in pushing forward some of these recommendations, making the adjustments that make sense, that making it happen, especially with CETA. The one that's before you now is the qualifying certificate amendments that update it from the 2020. What was a consideration when we were proposing and considering and thinking through this idea was, how can we use this as a vehicle to target new investment, not just to provide incentives, not just to encourage economic development, but to make it a vehicle that the CNMIC has an input into due diligence on investors. So as a component of the QC process would be a system in which CETA, the CNMI government, can assess the credibility, the ability of an investor to adequately complete a project, which I think is the goal, and adequately do a project that the CNMI wants them to do, that's in the best interest of the economy, but also their ability to complete it. And so trying to package in those requirements, because at the moment, if an individual wanted to buy public land and do a certain development, there is no real checks or balances, checks on the credibility of that investor to finish it, to go about the process in the way that we expect them to. If we had a vehicle and an ability and incentive for somebody to first enter in and have the possibility of an incentive program, then go through that due diligence process as a requirement of receiving it, that gives us the CETA, the CNMI insight into the type of investment that's coming, and hopefully stimulating the quality investments that we're looking for in lieu of the quantity.
I really need to unload everything that's going on here. Yeah, it's a great conversation. I'm not sure whether in any in your report, whether it talks about the count of lodging inventory that we have. Normally, we try to follow what Handme provides with data. But considering the market right now, there's a lot of Airbnb, right, businesses that have come about. Many moons ago, it was discussed that there's a shortage of inventory for tourists. Moving forward, you got a 10-year adopted blueprint, which also MVA formally adopted, correct? And we're talking about economic development and growth. I want to know if there's any current data that we could take a look at with respect to existing hotels, the new construction of maybe potential new hotels coming in, the branding, those brand names coming in, and the existing Airbnb inventory, CNMI wide. And at the same time, looking at the potential growth for the Tinian municipality and the Rhoda municipality to tie those formulas in or inventory count as well in anticipation of this particular market growth CNMI wide. I think that's very essential because I go back in time when I remember Jerry making a statement during all the Economic Council meetings, even during for the late Governor Enos's time and Fitel, where we asked the question of how much growth do we still want on the island of Saipan? And what about looking at developing growth and encouraging growth on the other municipalities such as Rhoda and Tinian? I think a lot of that has to play into all of this decision making moving forward and the master plan, the 10-year plan, the blueprint to get the CNMI back on track with respect to economic growth and development. And we tie that in also to the conversation of the infrastructure of all three islands and what is that potential growth that we're looking at and how much investment in terms of the infrastructure development and sustainability to hold up the economic growth that we are futuristically looking at.
Thank you for bringing that subject matter up. It actually segues into many other conversations that we could have. To focus in on the inventory numbers, yes, it has been a unofficial, official count, if you will, of Airbnb guest houses and of the 12 resort style hotels and then non-resort. And I'll stand corrected, but just off the top of my head, I believe there's about 2,800 resort style hotels of the 12 that are in Hanmi members. Of non-resort, we've got somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1,500. And then in the Airbnb and guest houses, it's anywhere from 600 to 1,200 rooms that are in that inventory. Now, mind you, we don't think we could have had the robust numbers that we had coming out of 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and the numbers that we had without Airbnb and guest houses, just to be very frank with you. So we do need the inventory, to your point. What is coming out post-COVID, we think, is should Michael Kwan, the Honest Profit, and a couple of other organizations that are destined to put new facilities in. Coalition Point still has a contract with DPL to put a physical 250, 300 room hotel. We're going to put 116 rooms additional into the Crown Plaza property. When these are done, we're looking at somewhere near 1,000, 1,200 additional rooms in the resort aspect of things. And so, while we need the Airbnb and guest houses, what we also need them to do is comply with public law, we think. And we have met with Secretary Dave Attelig, who is already on a effort towards trying to ensure that everybody was paying their fair share in the Commonwealth. And so there is legislation that will be put forward, we think, and regulations that will transform what transient accommodations mean in the Commonwealth. And then also, we hope putting in the teeth that are needed to ensure that we are enforcing the collection of those taxes from Airbnb and guest houses. We want to all have the ability to have these. We think it complements the landscape, if you will. There are people that prefer. I travel with a family. I use Airbnbs. It's easier to keep everybody together than have them in multiple rooms, as an example, from my perspective. But we think that they need to be paying their fair share, and the leakage, if you will, of the hot tax that's not collected by these particular ventures, we think is too significant to ignore. It's been estimated somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 million, as high as somebody's simple calculation off the top of their heads, at $10 million at one point. I mean, I think that's a little off, but We think that the low is an actual factual number that we were leaking in the Commonwealth from actual hot taxes. And it was, if you looked at the timelines, I'm talking about 16, 17, 18, 19, you saw a gradual transition of, I'm going to say legitimate hotel operations that were paying the hot. While the numbers were scaling upwards in our inbound, they were scaling down in the entry towards these hotels because the guest houses and Airbnbs were, funneling the numbers to them. But what we weren't seeing is the impact towards your coffers. They were diminishing, and that to us is, counterintuitive to what we want to do here as far as growing our economy. We can grow our economy, we can grow our opportunities with tourism, but we also need to ensure that we're growing the coffers so that you can do your work. So that's my observation of Airbnbs, guest houses. We are keeping our eye on the ball, if you will, on this, keeping the information continually focused within Department of Finance and the hotel industry. And we're hopeful that we can get legislation through that does provide the teeth and identifies what transient. In fact, we just took a trip into Honolulu to meet with their council. They have just passed a very aggressive Airbnb guest house legislation that identifies that a person that is in this realm has to have stayed 90 days or more to avail of this. And so, that limits a lot of inventory to the Airbnb structure and the taxation requirement in recognition of what is a rental and what is an Airbnb guest transient stay.
Yes, so just staying on that thought process on the room inventory. So I'm also wondering if the units that are under the LIHTC program that is administered by the Northern Marianas Housing Corporation, is that also part of the inventory count? Yeah, and
Shouldn't be.
No,
By law, it shouldn't be.
I know, but we talk about the bleeding, right? We never know what's happening under the radar. Yeah, so I want to kind of like bring that up, and then it's very important that we talk about that. Where you talk about the hot tax, you're talking about, it's obviously a conversation of enforcement. It's a system. It's been many years back talked about visiting and making sure that everybody pays the tax that is due, and there's a lot of pressure in the legislature about. We need to get back on track and create industries and think about how do we bring in new, fresh revenue. But we have to be honest with ourselves that we also need to fix our system. Our enforcement system is lacking, and a lot of that bleeding is happening out there in the market. And it'd be interesting to know if to do a study of at that point period of had enforcement been conducted properly, how much revenue has been lost that the Commonwealth could have received and sustain itself and ride out this pandemic and whatever other disaster that's coming to us. God forbid that happens again. But let's say focus on now switching to House Bill 2270. And I know that CETA is playing a key role in that. And we just had a most recent Senate session, if I'm not mistaken, that was referred back to the committee to take a look further. But I did make an inquiry back on March 2nd, 2022. I sent an email to CETA and I was asking for the 5-year economic plan or development goals. And the response I got is that they will work on it on the premise of the passage of House Bill 22-70. My question before that even happens, as we speak right now, have you seen any significant difference in the prior 5-year economic goals of the Commonwealth in prior studies as what we are talking about today?
Yeah, so I think one of the talking points now and one of the differences, I think, in the coming future, first off, is the creation of CETA and the recent hiring of the economic development manager. I think that is a commonplace element within economic development organizations across the United States. It is a primary goal of a lot of them, and they do have a significant role in devising this and helping manage that. So it's a really good effort from CETA's part in building out that structure. One of the interesting facts and sort of one of the reasons why we were really advancing the idea of CETA was if you looked at prior economic development reports and economic reports talking about the future goals and priorities and plans. For instance, the one that comes to mind in particular was the 1998 Economic Development Strategy that was put together by NMC and really was a pretty comprehensive document that talked to the private sector and talked to the public sector about what was needed. Laid out a lot of the issues that were prohibiting growth in a lot of different sectors, tech, pharmaceuticals, outside of tourism, and laid out these hindrances, but incorporated in that CEDA at the time, a CDA at the time wasn't in that conversation and wasn't seen to be a role. They were in fact talking about the need for an economic development agency that would do these things. And so that was part of the interest over the course of the last over the course since the initiation of CEDA in '84 was really geared towards providing financing and not necessarily promoting economic development plans or goals. And so they are geared up now. They have the capabilities. They have the ability to really advance that conversation and really put the goals and the efforts and priorities down at this time frame. And they're doing a great job, I think, in pushing forward and getting to that point where they are the forefront of economic development and planning for that within the CNMI in conjunction with the work that OPD is doing.
To your point, Senator, you talk about the last, say, 5 years, and I want to put a perspective on a lot of what is being solidified through channel issues, and so labor, is a key component. The fact that we have seen the transition of NM Tech, I think is what they're calling themselves now, into the administration, and a focal point towards the training aspect, certification in both tech, and NMC's efforts towards focusing in on second and 4-year degrees. That and the effort towards the training that's going on, apprenticeship that's hopefully finally after 20 years of looking at this, I mean, outside in, I've taken a personal interest in ensuring that this pushes forward, and we really believe that we need industry involved. Construction primarily, we have near $2 billion, if all is said and done with BBB and everything else that's coming down the pike, to spend within the Commonwealth, that we really need our construction industry and ancillary industries to step up and make it a priority that they organize and ensure that they're bringing in apprenticeship and training and things of this nature within the context of industry, and the monies that are being spent on Tinian, Saipa, and Luta, that that we have the private sector take a big role in partnering with NMC and creating the apprenticeship program. And while we're in lockstep with that, the GAO report was very telling. We are, yes, in this timeline at the highest U.S. citizen workforce rate ever in the Commonwealth's history, but also coming out of this, we have to look at the situation. To your point, how many is too many in our tourism industry, in our overall growth? It's going to be determined by virtue of the headcount that we have in the islands. We are at now 12,000 CW workforce, 11.5 soon. In 2 years, we will be below our CW quota that was pre-COVID. So we were at 10.5 in the Commonwealth. We will be below that in 2 years. And that is very alarming because, what happens to industry, what happens to businesses when we do lose the workforce. And so that, to the point we made in the video, we have to focus on U.S. citizen growth and workforce development in the Commonwealth, but we also have to look at the transition period for the CW workforce. If we do not have both in lockstep and the numbers retained, we cannot grow this economy. We cannot see 1,200 additional rooms and beyond that. And so, the work that's being done, the administration's effort in the 902 talks was very key. in the first round in Hawaii with Esther Kiaina in the labor front, and then in 2018 with solidifying an agreement to move forward the effort towards putting EVP into place, which is hopefully happening very soon. Finding a more concrete solution towards a China visa waiver program for the Commonwealth only. That hopefully will complete by the end of this year. And so, we won't have the idea that, a temporary discretionary entry for visa could be pulled at any given time, that we have this concrete effort in the Korea, Japan, and China market, which the governor has put forward as 30-30-30, the diversification of our tourism market. But we do need to look at the transition period for our workforce, and we really need to focus on legislation that's going to change the dynamic behind that. Diminishing our numbers in the foreign national workforce effort is not going to help our economy. It's going to hurt it. And so that's what we are. And again, lockstep, focused on pursuing the training that we need on the ground for our U.S. citizen workforce, our local workforce. We need to put the effort behind the CW workforce as well.
All right, so I'm gonna end my question for today. It's good that we're talking about the workforce data, and I understand because I also look at the chart of the reduction in the allocation of the CW1. We're currently at a current year, and I think the next year again is at 500, and year after that will be 1,000, right? So yeah, we're rapidly declining, but at the same time too that the per fiscal year allocation is not fully used, right? So we live with that as well. But what also makes me interested, I recently saw an article where it talks about, the CNMI is requesting for an additional 3,000 construction workers, and there's a push, I believe, again, to get them under the CW1 program, when we know for a fact, as we speak today, that that's no longer so, allowable at the current U.S. law. Everybody has to be processed under H-2B. Data is very critical with respect to talking about economic growth and development, because a lot of that is premised on the availability of the workforce, especially in the construction sector. And I'm wondering, where did that 3,000 number come out from? I don't see any data report regarding how many CW1s that were processed, through USCIS in every particular sector of the economy. I don't know again where the 3,000 came from. We do know that there's more than 100 million with the recent awarding of Black Micro for the Project Continuum for the military build-up, and that's a lot of money. And that's going to require a lot of workers for the next 4-year plan of that particular construction project. And that 3,000 number, for the life of me, I'm just like, well, who provided that number? Like, what is really the true count of construction workers within the Commonwealth? I talked to many contractors out there, even for a small project at residential locations. People are struggling to find workers. So there's an apparent, an indication that there's a lack of qualified skilled workers in that particular sector of the economy. But data is so critical, and we do know that hopefully the CNMI Department of Labor will follow the FOIA and have a frequent conversation with USCIS, like how I used to do it before, and break down, right, the occupations that have been approved under CW1, so that we truly know exactly what is the total number of inventory of workers within every particular occupation. In your report, 18,983 claimants for pandemic. You got 2,202 individuals in, that were impacted. How many in service-related and food production occupations, things like that. But we're talking about the economic growth and development of the Commonwealth. And we're talking about U.S. citizen, the apprenticeship program. Those are all, futuristically speaking, job security as a result of the development and growth of our economy. And that's the reason why all of this formula study, the analytics kicking in, taking your 10-year plan out, when projects will be breaking ground and when projects are anticipated to complete, and when those employment opportunities will be created.
The 3,000 number from really came from the public law, but primarily aimed towards disaster recovery projects. And so that is one critical initiation point for accessing the 3,000 under the CW program is whether or not they have contracts or work related to a presidentially declared disaster. One of the conversations that I think is ongoing is extending that time frame out so that they can still be eligible for receipt of a CW program to continue work on presidentially declared disasters. I think an open question that we have discussed is whether or not issues related to economic recovery and COVID and responses from infrastructure spending plans in recent years, if that gets covered under the CW allotment for the 3,000, but I'm not familiar with the calculation that came up with that. There are reports, however, specifically related to Tinian, that are good insights, I think, into levels of spending and the requirements of workers. The 2020 Tinian construction capacity study that was done by NAFAC did lay out the levels of construction workers that were required at different levels per per federal government contract stages. And it does highlight that there is a significant demand for construction workers that may or may not be eligible under CW, may or may not be accessible under H2B. And it is an open question that really is limiting growth and limiting the potential for developing really adequate economic growth that will support U.S. jobs. And I think that's the other data element that is clear from GAO reports and from the work that we've done in the past, is that the CW and the growth of the economy and the support of CWs within that framework does support U.S. growth and U.S. jobs as businesses develop, as industries enter into the economy. And to their credit, out of Department of Commerce and the CNMI government, majority of the requirements of Public Law 15-218, the data requirements and reporting requirements are borne by the CNMI government. And so we do a prevailing wage survey, we do the labor force ratio, we collect all the data, where in other states and in other jurisdictions, that's all products of the federal government. And so they're really pulling a lot of their weight in making sure that we have the data that we do have, and the federal government has the data that they do have. So
I'll take a hand at the number as well. It is my understanding that the 3,000 was also a product of pre-Workforce Act legislation that pulled construction out of the CW numbers and was a standalone piece of legislation that allowed for construction prior to the bar. So we had the bar was implemented beyond the legislation, restricting, Filipino nationals from being hired because of exploitation at the time. But that has been repealed and is now a product of the CW. So we have the ability to hire Philippine nationals, Taiwanese, whatever, within the effort of bringing in CW, as long as they do not meet the H2B criterion, right? And so the problem with, as you know, H2B is it's project specific, time specific, limited. In fact, as an example, during U2, we asked IPI at the time if we could bring their employees into the villages, into the community, to help with the restoration effort. And we were told point blank, by virtue of their permitting, that they had not the ability to help because they were limited to the project scope that they were on the island for. And that's the concern that we have with H2B, is it does not meet and conform with our needs in the Commonwealth. We need day laborers in the Commonwealth. We need the ability to pick up the phone and say, I need a plumber at this stage. But because of prevailing wage that Matt brings up, we think and we believe that the numbers shouldn't impact the local workforce. We should be insisting that U.S. citizen workers be focused in the construction industry. That's why I brought up the fact that we need the construction industry in the Commonwealth to organize, provide for a construction association like they do in Guam, and be the catalyst to training up our people, because we want to see, Joe, Maria, Tunse, whoever, in their own businesses, in their own cottage industry downline, when they are trained up through apprenticeship, through their skill sets, do the modules, do all of the requirements that everybody else is doing regionally to get them to this point where they have their own plumbing business, they have their own masonry business, they have their own construction industry business, and they're off making it on their own. That's what the future, to your point, 5-10 years down line, it's unfortunate that we've taken 20 years to get to this point. And in my viewpoint, of seeing this through visioning at NMC, through many, I guess, for lack of a better term, lost opportunities that we've had in really focusing in on this effort. But I've never seen it in my timeline, and maybe you have the same opinion. I've never seen the concerted effort that we've had in all of the institutions of higher learning and education coming together, whether it be Laddie Training Institute, NMC, MTech, PSS in the co-op program. These are all going to be critical components in ensuring that our workforce is centered around the idea that we could put them into industries and hopefully grow their opportunities downline when a CETA does come forward with funding to be able to establish your entrepreneurship opportunities downline.
Great
And
points.
speaking of economic diversification, I apologize that I may have to depart soon. There's a Cannabis Commission summit happening now at World Resort, and I'm on a panel at 10:30. So I'm going to be a little bit late to that, but I really appreciate the time, and I don't mean to cut it short. I'm just in case I have to.
Certainly, we don't need to finish our questions today. We want to meet again sometime, right? Senator De Leon Guerrero almost wrapped up everything. But this is good. This is good platform where we just freely talk on the matters. I enjoy these kind of things because I learn also. I'm a sucker for new information, so I'm just listening to you guys that are actually out there and doing the, boots on the ground.
If I could take the opportunity to kind of finish up on mine, you have to leave. No problem.
Alex,
Yeah.
To your point earlier, man. Excuse me. You were mentioning about workforce, and I keep hearing workforce development and all that, and side and separate from what's been happening, that's beyond our control, with the pandemic and all that. But it appears, our competing interest is not too far from here. They do have a construction workers needs, just at least 70 miles from here. And as far as the tourism, why come to the CNMI when I can go to Thailand or I can go to the Philippines at probably half of what I'm supposed to, and I can probably see the same thing. Can probably see more people and all that. So those are the challenges that I foresee coming through, and I know that you guys are fishing this out. I feel that we transcended from as far as the Japanese tourism, from the ones that come here. No disrespect to any gender or age category, but the ones that come here to honor the World War II and all that, right? But now there's that another push, the younger generation. So I think the cinema has to be attractive in that regard, whether it's jumping off a plane at 10,000 feet, but we did before to I don't know, what do you call that, zip line or something? Is this some of the stuff that you can track other clientele. And also to your points earlier with regards to diversification and just developing all three islands, and to the point of Senator Cruz, since I'm alive, I've never seen Tinian's population go up to 10,000. So what in Japanese time, it went up further than that. And there was a demand for that. So I think we need to drive a demand. Why would we need more than 10,000 people in Tinian? Like what Senator De Leon was saying, how big do we want? When do we say no more? It's enough. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I appreciate the 10-year plan. I'm anxious to actually see it. Rhoda, for that matter, they have beautiful opportunities to offer. But we can go on, and I don't want to just try to finish this, and we can probably return on a more truncated at issue base. Asset inventory is what Senator Leon Guerrero was saying earlier. What is our worth? Mo naman gaigit, public lands, and what's stopping us as government leaders, as business leaders, from saying to our U.S. citizen, "Tisinya mo no pa San Lago for a greener pasture." That's the challenge. If they can't make it here, they'll fly. So there's that happy medium that we need to identify between the transition out from CW, the demand for construction workers, the demand for the day-to-day stuff, I don't know, maybe a new legislation for CNMI only or CNMI in Guam. Maybe we need to go to the U.S. Congress because we can't. This is their doing. Basically, it's the U.S. Immigration. Not want to get into that, but if it's the interest of national security, I think we are the safest, quite frankly. But we need to survive somehow. We can't keep knocking ourselves left and right to say we need to train, we need to train, we need to train. But once we train them and get certified, they leave. They go to Guam, they go to the U.S. for greener pastures, and I don't blame them at all. So that happy medium is going to be very challenging, and we need to continue on and try to find that common no that this like what all the stuff that you guys been doing, the CEDA, workforce development. I've mentioned this in the past, where all the public institutions and education institutions get together and come up with work with the business and the government to see what kind of workforce do we need to develop. I got looked at differently when I asked, is really graduating 10 high school students, all 10 of them are going to be doctors and lawyers and businesses like this? So these are the things that we need to know as policymakers too, so we can guide them through. And I can go on and on, but thank you so much. I don't want to. I think Senator Carl wants to take a crack at some of the issues. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to thank you, Matt and Alex, for spending your time this morning and providing us with great information that I think we need to be informed regarding what you guys have done, which is amazing already. What you guys have completed on all three islands and what you aspire to do moving forward. So thank you again, and also to Co-Chair Jerry Tan for all that you do. Appreciate it.
Good.
If I could address the proximity issue. Geographically, you can't take away the fact that we are 3 hours from Japan, 4 hours from Korea, 5.5 hours from Beijing. And if you take that in comparison to your analogies with Thailand and the rest of them, they are 6, 7, 8 hours from all of those destinations, all those source markets, I'm sorry. And that's the significant difference, on top of the fact that we are a U.S. territory and safe. Those are the key exit points in discussions with many of the groups that come in. That's what they see as a benefit, as well as our absolute beauty. And the fact, I think, to the point that we always make about our brothers and sisters in Guam, they only have one other island, Cocos. We have 14 islands, but we have 3 beautiful islands that are populated and that they can go to. And that's really our effort here, is the multi-island destination. In this COVID timeline, coming post-COVID, we really believe that there's an opportunity to sell multi-island because they are going to have been staying longer. The TRIP program absolutely played this out. The fact that they were here concentrated for 1 week, that is why they went off onto Tinian and Rota, because they had the additional time. And to your point made earlier about the Japan timeline, the limited 3 days that they stay, their focal point has been Saipan or a day trip into Rota to dive, and then the day trips into Tinian. But their focal point was Saipan, and that's what we have been trying to push out. In the Century Travel scenario, they were 4 and 5 days here, and they were taking their day trips into Tinian. They weren't necessarily wanting to go all the way to Rota, but they were taking their day trips. The significant change that needs to be made is inter-island carriage that Matt's pointed out. Whether it be air or sea service, this timeline, with all of the federal dollars that are available to us in Maritime Highway, and the potential that we could get essential air service subsidies, the opportunity is golden, I think, for us to truly exploit this, to get a ferry service that can drop a car into Tinian and Rota, that can have subsidies towards reducing the cost of overall cargo into the islands. As we all know, the impact on the islands and cargo service and the cost of moving things is ridiculous. We ventured and purchased a facility in Rota. To just develop that and rehab that facility is just costing us an arm and a leg for a very small 26 room facility. It's been a challenge. And so, yeah, to answer that question you had, we're really trying to delve in and look at all opportunities. How do we market the three islands and the northern islands downline, hopefully? And we're looking at everything, and we're looking at it. And what I wanted to do to talk about when I started up in this is the idea of how do we make Tinian and Rhoda and Saipan focal points to the opportunities of our beauty, right? And cash in on that somewhat. And one of the ideas that we have within the tourism resumption infrastructure plan is to put visitor centers within the islands, Saipan, Tinian, and Rhoda. And I'll give you a very simple example. As you talked about when we first met, I just recently went on a trip. It's one of our examples within the report, which we can send to you as well. Again, working with a consultant, we delved into the idea that if you generate a specific focal point, Mapi as an example, the House of Taga in Rhoda, Motong in Rhoda, and develop a visitor center. Now, mind you, we know when you go and see these sites, they're what they are, right? You're there, you see them. But if there is a visitor center that people can center around, go in and learn the historical perspective, the true historical perspective of Mapi, the House of Taga, Motsong, and then put F&B around it, collateral sales around it, interactive understanding of the flora and fauna that's around that area. Mapi is a prime example of a multifaceted area that could be really exploited financially by a PPP, a privateer coming in. And so I want to give you the example of going to the Cliffs of Moher in Ireland. There are 90 locations in the Heritage Trail for Ireland. There's an app for it. 25% of the revenue stream that comes from their efforts towards this comes from the Cliffs of Moher. It's a cliff. You go there, you take a photo, you prove that you were there, and that's it. You're there for 20 seconds, maybe a minute, and that's all you're going to get out of it is that photo op, that Instagrammable photo opportunity. But when you walk out of it, there's a visitor center that's 15,000 square feet that's centered around this cliff. And what's in there, as I mentioned, is a historical perspective, the photos and flora and fauna that can't be seen by virtue of standing at the top of the cliff. You'll see an interactive video that's been provided, but again, around it is the gift shop, an area where people can get dining done, and just take a load off. And restrooms is the prime one of the big things, right? Mapi, whether in Tinian or Rhoda, where there are public restrooms. And so we believe that if you create this one center, that the opportunity for the Commonwealth in the revenue stream that could come from that is enormous. And you'll see in the report that we provided you that it is the Cliffs of Moher. There's a Canadian location that is one of the most popular visited sites in all of Canada. It is a forest. It's got a ravine. They put a wood bridge across it. And then, a bunch of other little facets behind this area that is a forest. But it's one of the most visited sites, and it makes them $80 million a year. They charge $80 to visit this area, and people pay it. And so just, putting simple things like that into place, we believe that if you create the opportunity, the revenue stream around it would resolve a lot of problems. It would take the cost of maintenance in large degree off the books of the Commonwealth government and put it into a privateer that could transform, along with the government in a PPP, the area of Mapi, House of Taga, Motsong, or other places in Rhoda. And so that's one of the big ideas that we're really trying to push forward to get with DPL, the DNLR, the legislature, to look at placing the opportunities of public land into the hands of privateers and the government, and joining forces to create these opportunities that we think would help the Commonwealth coffers and help to market this island and put it on the map for people to look in and say, yeah, we want to go to see this because there's this opportunity that was created. So
If I could,
I just wanted to ask,
Sorry.
is there an indication of the returning tourism, the rebuilding of tourism? Is there any knowledge or any indication as to those kind of clients that would like to do tours in the jungles, in like trekking, eco tourism, or and all that? And because those seem to like pick up a lot of steam right now if you go on social media. So I believe that if we highlight some of that, then we can start talking diversification of the three islands, no? Because they have unique, unique sites to offer.
Yeah, I think there's a really interesting mystery that happened in 2016, 2017, where you had in the CNMI 99% occupancy in the hotels, in the major hotels. You had spillovers into the Airbnbs, and we have a conversation about how much we lost with Airbnbs on tax revenue. What was the mystery is in this area of tight demand, tight supply, where there wasn't enough hotel rooms, prices for per hotel rooms didn't move, which is counter to what basic economics would suggest. Our average daily room rates did not move. And so why? I think that is the big question when it comes to all sorts of things, ecotourism, other opportunities, branding, is that even in the most constrained tourism market for our hotel stocks that we've had in generations, average daily room rates didn't go up. And this is indicative of the broader range. So there needs to be effort. And I wanted to wait to have this last point. I think it wraps it up in a little bit for me, is that there needs to be a comprehensive effort, not just into the hotels, into the ecosystem in which our tourists and our visitors and our residents are involved in, where there needs to be ecotourism options. There needs to be multi-island destination. There needs to be branding as a component of our tourism product. We need to have a keen insight into the types of products that we're offering so that we can move our way up towards the room rates, because the question of how much we lost on Airbnbs is maybe secondary to how much we lost because our products weren't increasing in price at that time frame, which I would contend is significantly more than whatever the tax revenue loss from Airbnb was. And so, but this goes in broader too. I mean, for economic diversification and the work of the PPP, in really building a community ownership, and the community that takes ownership and pride in the quality of our surroundings aids in getting investors in other industries into looking at the CNMI as a community worth investing into in whatever industry is needed within the global economy. And so this comprehensive effort of this look into not just tourism, not just what our tourists are seeing, but in the totality of it really came to light for me in 2016, 2017, when there just did not make any sense. And it really came down to we needed a more broader look at our product. So thank you.
All right, members, gentlemen and gentle ladies. I guess that wraps up our meeting this morning. Again, I appreciate all the time and the ideas and the reports and all the guidance that you guys can share with us and moving forward. So please know that we're open to sit down further on another platform, and kindly extend appreciation to our partners throughout the CNMI for their support. So with that, members, thank you, staff, Jesus Masi, and have a great morning.